Good morning, and welcome back to the Dossier Project. We have been discussing the 12 traits that we think, the 12 top traits that we think make a DOS woman. And we started with a 1 month challenge where we explored those traits. And since we've extended that challenge to a 1 year challenge for those who want to more deeply delve into each trait and practice them so that you can develop them in yourself. And the trait that we're discussing this month is character. So we'll share a little bit with you about our definition of character, our experiences about character, both in and out of DOS. And we invite you to also explore for yourself what you think character is and apply that to different experiences in your life. So if you guys like this, go ahead and like. If you think it might be helpful to someone or beneficial to a friend, go ahead and share it. And of course, please do subscribe if you want more information about our topics. Okay, so ladies, what do you guys think character is?
Character is, I don't know, it's a little bit very, very close to discipline, but to me, it's like having a strong character means like having the, I don't know, say personality trait that will do something even if you don't feel like it, and that's where it's very close to discipline to me. But also it's like it's more of an internal trait rather than a discipline. To me sounds like a external, like a doing thing. Character is like an internal strength to go against something, to have a tough conversation, to stand up for what you believe in. That to me is like strong character.
About it, you have it very active, like the character to do something. And when I was first defining it to myself, I was the character to self-restrain, to not do something, to actually like withhold from, I don't know, indulging in overeating or in gossip or in, some sort of behavior that would be maybe destructive or not the most beneficial.
Yes, I was describing it as it's interesting because it is, for me, it is also doing, but it's like the restraining is doing something for me, the way I see it. So it's like doing something for the right reasons, independently of if I feel it's uncomfortable or not, so the right reasons meaning more like an overall principle or thing. It's almost like your conscience, right? Like it tells you, when I was running, there would be this part of me that would be like, oh, I don't want to go, like it's hot. It's like, I don't have time. Like you start coming up with all sort of good excuses. But then I think that that's what I mean with the right reason. It's like, well, but this is for my health. So when I keep that in mind, I think that's when I can access more easily, quote unquote, to character. But yeah, it has to do with something that I think it's important.
I agree with a lot of that. I was thinking a lot about character of just being the consistency of someone's behaviors. So like you can have a strong character or a good character. You can also have a weak character or a bad character. And I was thinking it has to do with the consistency of the behaviors that you show and kind of the balance of what you say and what you do. So do you walk the talk? Do you do what you say, or do you say a lot of stuff but you don't do it? And to me that's like a weak character, or like is someone who's more frivolous or all over the place, right? But a strong character is someone who's very consistent. You can rely on them. There's a certain yeah, like they'll do it no matter what. So yeah, I agree with it. The more it's tested, like it needs to be tested as well. You can say, oh, I'm going to do this and this and this and this and this, and but it's like when you test it, when you get into a difficult situation where there's adversity, where there's a pushback, and you still do it, I think that's where the strong character can get built, or can be, or built.
Just adding on to that, I think it brings up two things that, Angie, what you were saying, it's like to me, it is that like standing up or for a principle of some sort. And that's why it's very consistent and an internal thing, because it's not like just a short, like, oh, and it's not proven just by doing one thing. It is agree against it. Adversity, I think totally. It's like, I also think it's something that you need to show versus tell, right? And you do that by what you were saying, Sajo. It's put to the practical test. It's not theoretical or abstract. Really, how you know is by your either doing or not doing something.
I like that, those distinctions. And I think I have a good example, or at least I relate to it in this way. When I was younger, I used to struggle. Well, I love food, and there's plenty of people who do. So I'm sure plenty of people will
I love
relate.
food and food loves me.
Loves me a little too much. So when I was younger, I used to indulge more than was necessary for sure, and went through a series of experiences to try to help myself learn self-restraint. And that was probably one of the things I was most proud of as I grew up. But Linda, in terms of what you were saying, when it's tested, and there's different levels of it being tested, as I went on this journey and I learned how to self-restrain, or how to not indulge or choose other things, make other things more important. Different situations were different, and I think there's, like one situation where you just don't put anything in your house that tempts you. Your house is just healthy food, right? So there's no option to really indulge. So that's one level of character. At least at the grocery store, you said, no, I'm not putting this in my house, right? You said no to it at that point. And maybe you're not going out on secret missions to get the food when you don't have it in your house, so that's like one level of restraint. But then there's another level where, can you be around other people who eat those foods, but you're out to brunch and you restrain? Maybe another level, you have it in your house. And of course, if you don't live alone, you live with other people. They may have many things in the house. And can you restrain? Can you, have it right in front of you, whatever it is. But I think all of those levels, I think through DOS, I made more distinctions in relationship to that. Earlier in my life, I had kind of figured out, how to really overcome a lot of that, and sit with the uncomfortable feelings as to why I wanted to eat more, and also just enjoying it. But in DOS, I did have much more of like a systematic way that I could build my character, which kind of became cool, where I realized it wasn't just haphazard. It was something that I could proactively build in myself in exactly that stepwise way that you were saying, that there's kind of these levels of self-restraint. So that was a pretty wonderful gift.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think to me it's an example of I do think it's like the restraint, part, and it's like ongoing, like, and if you break it once, does it mean that it does, I don't think it's like health, like, are you healthy? It's like it's subjective. It just because you maybe have chocolate once a week or once a month or whatever, it doesn't mean you're unhealthy or break that. But it's like over the, I guess over a period of time, and it's the level, or how long does it take you to get back, and just kind of, it's especially with, I see things like dieting, things like that. It's, weak character. It's like, I need it to be, like, think about my experience. It wasn't even calorie or dieting. It was just measuring, and just measuring and counting calories, but there was no limit on it. The character was to do things and be precise, and it was related to food, but it wasn't really. So, and it's just having the character kind of, even when you fall off or break it or forget or fail, to get back on the horse kind of quickly is a stronger character than, I think like it's a different, level versus like, with a weak character, if like, oh, okay, well, I broke it once, and then, like, well, I'll just start then on Monday, or I'll just start again, or it takes you a while to get back on the horse, so I think there's different ways to show or prove if you have developed that strong character, and by how many times you go, or actually maybe just choosing. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily perfection either, so it's just like maybe knowing that it becomes part of you, where like say exercising too, where then it's like you've built it so strongly, that muscle, that it feels bad for you not to exercise, or with food, it feels good for me to be eating healthy food. And then it becomes more part of you.
Habit. Yeah, and I was going to add to that, because for example, sticking to the dietary restrictions, I chose to be a vegetarian. I've been a vegetarian for 11 years, I think now. And people tell me these days, because for example, like roasted chicken, I grew up with it and I still smell it, and I would never eat it, but my whole body is like, oh, chicken, so it's interesting, because like I can open it, my family eats, so like I serve to them, not these guys, but like my bigger side of the family, like my parents and stuff, my dad. So when I open the thing, because it comes in a little bag, right, and I smell it, it's just like, oh my goodness. And people are like, oh my goodness, you have so much character because you're not eating it. And I don't take that as character anymore, because that's been such a habit for me. Like it's not hard anymore, it's like I wouldn't, I don't know how to describe it, but it was just a decision that I made, and yes, it's tough for my body, but it's not something that I feel like, oh yes, it's super tough. I can tell you other things that are super tough, but it's like not that one. But people think, people see me and we're like, wow, you have such, strength of character. And so it's interesting, because I don't take it as that, because for me, that has become easy, because it's a discipline, because it's a habit, because it's it's a choice, like over so many years, that I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, it's tough to smell it, because I don't know, it's just weird. So I was just going to add that it also makes a difference when you've made like a certain choice or certain habits. And I think we have to be, there's a lot of inner honesty, right, that goes on in this one. It's like, well, yeah, this is not really hard for me. There's other things that I do require character. So yeah, I was gonna add too, we have to have some inner honesty as well, to see like, well, am I building character with this, or is it more like it's just a discipline and a
Show. Yeah.
that I, yeah, and people see certain things, but I don't feel that way.
That speaks to what Sahaja was saying too on consistency. Like you've been so consistent with it, you just know at this point that that's part of who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm gonna ever choose to, change my diet, but at this moment, I don't need it, and I feel like, yeah, it's a habit more than character. So I guess what I'm trying to say, it's like also maybe when it's a habit, it doesn't require that amount of character anymore. And in order to keep evolving, I do believe that in order to keep evolving, we do need to keep ourselves, on point with character and finding things that push us towards that.
Maybe you should go vegan.
Right.
One of the things in DOS.
It is.
Oh, go ahead, Sasha.
I was just going to say it is relative, like for example, someone waking up at 6 a.m. for one person, it's a nightmare. They have to set 10 alarms or whatever. And it's like they torture, like it takes a lot for them to get out. For the next person, they don't set alarm, they just wake up and it's easy. So I think, again, it's relative, and it's an honesty thing that we need to like check with ourselves. And I do think it, there's a sense of like it gets built when it's tested or there's adversity. So like when it's easy, it's like, I think like you've built the character to resist that kind of a thing. I guess, like you could push it and say, what if, you're on an island and you're starving to death and there's a chicken there, like, what do you do then? Like, there, it'll like really get
Magically,
tested. So I think
roasted
it's,
chicken appears.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like, and it's, you know, I don't think it's good, you know, in itself, good or bad. It's more of a tool. Like, are you the kind of person who does what you say? Are you, you know, reliable? Do you do what, you know, we all have our like ideological, philosophical ideas of how we want to be, who we want to be. And either we do the actions to uphold that and go towards that, or we don't. And I think that's just you know, I think a lot of people talk about how they want to be or who or what they think is good, but then do they do it? You know, do they actually push on it?
Yeah. Well, and I think having a clarity, again, back to what I was sharing before, like having a clarity of why do you do it? You know, it's like I'm a vegetarian because I don't want to kill animals, for example. That's a very different thing than health. So, you know, maybe those two at some point they will clash. So, but not so bad, like having really clear ideas of what we want doesn't mean that we're going to uphold it. You're right, Sahajito, but at least we know when we are or we're not upholding what it's important to us.
I think that's a really important point because there's two things that I see in what you guys are saying. One is you can just do it as a rule and you kind of become a soldier or a robot, you know, and you're just doing it without the evaluation. And I think DOS was really helpful for me in that too, that it was always evaluating. You know, if you do have two values that start to clash, is there ever a point? I've been a vegetarian also for, I think it's 10 years now, but is there ever a point where I would choose to eat meat? And it's an ongoing evaluation. Like if I couldn't get pregnant, for instance, and having a child is really important to me, or if there was a health thing, and having that door open, I think that relates very much to character as well. Because if it's just robotic and your heart's not in it, or there's not a like you're not feeling it, and there's no evaluation, I don't know that that's the same thing as character. Maybe discipline, but even in that, it feels like it's empty. It's just robotic versus having that evaluation and then having to lead yourself through value conflicts. And I very much went through a point where it felt like a rule, you know, like I had to just uphold it. I didn't want to think through it, you know. And then eventually you make it yours and you figure out what your boundaries are. Like, do you let non-vegetarian people eat in your house? Do you go to restaurants that serve meat? Do you like, what are all of your boundaries with that?
That's where I think when Danielle, when you're talking, it reminds me of now knowing there's a certain kind of benefit of that over time, where in our experience with DOS, and especially now, it reminds me like to start off, if you haven't done anything, a rule probably is a good start, right? Just do it, something better than nothing, and then building that. And then we all hear, you know, we all share the value of personal development. That's kind of one of the main reasons why we're a part of DOS. And I think looking back at it's kind of not, it was maybe one of the intentions. It's not how we thought it was going to work out, but just in terms of having the character to really stand up for what you believe in. And also, I think, you know, we hear a lot, don't take things personally or don't, no, meaning like, or don't care what other people think. And I think the whole experience with DOS, it's just like when everything kind of fell apart. Now the unintended effect is though that I think post that really having built that character through DOS prepared us for real life examples when people thought they believed all these terrible, untrue rumors about us and media and etc. And really evaluating that in terms of relationships, you know, having the character, do I just, you know, and having a lot of pressure from family and friends and coworkers and everybody just to disassociate, just say that you're, you know, not going to have anything to do with it, just quote, leave. I mean, there was really nothing to leave. So it was at that point, it was just more like, if you just say that you're against it, you're no longer part of it, you can keep all your friends and family and them thinking that you're not part of this thing. And I think that was a true huge test. I don't know. I mean, what bigger test than have all your closest like love and relationships tested and still be able to know very clearly why we're doing it. It's not because what people think. It's not because there was some fascination or, relationship for Keith or, anything like that. It was what they didn't understand is it was for me and my values and what I stood for. And you couldn't pay me enough. You couldn't, do things to really like, and it would have been so easy just to say, yeah, I'm no longer going to be part of it. I'm not having anything to do with it. I'm going to completely just disown that. But having that character to be able to stand up, because even if no one else knew, I would know I was compromising on my values. And that goes to my identity and who I am and so forth. And, I, you just, nothing is, worth going against myself.
I actually think that DOS in many ways was a character gym, character building gym. Like I think that was one of the intentions really, is that, like character is doing what you say you'll do. So it's like having a certain vision or a certain principle or something and then doing it. And and first thing I think all of us did in DOS was write a vow, which was writing what we wanted, what was important to us, what we, what our vision was for ourselves, what we wanted. And then there was a whole bunch of exercises or things that, presented where you could test that. So, whether it was counting calories, whether it was, not drinking coffee, whether it was going and taking a cold shower. To me, DOS was in a way there to help us build our characters in a safe space.
Yeah, it's true. Their structure was super helpful to, just being like a cast. I thought of it like a cast. So there were many disciplines that we used to do consistently that you're right, Sahajo. It felt like those were the things that would, the cast, the disciplines were the cast, and then we were able to rebuild or build from the ground up our character and other things that we're gonna talk about soon. So
I think this is a great place to have the character to self-restrain, to not share anymore, and for us to end. So in ending, I will echo what you mentioned, Linda. I do think that through DOS we had this wonderful opportunity for us to start to build these traits, and DOS doesn't exist anymore. I think it's a huge testament to our character in a lot of ways, but also just it really speaks to the fact that these were traits that we wanted to build. We weren't forced to build them. We weren't coerced in any way. These were things that we wanted. And depending on what, we were all presented with an opportunity when things went south, and women, every single woman in DOS was presented with this opportunity to figure out, what are my values? What do I really care about? What do I stand for? And how far am I willing to go to uphold it? So, so with that being said, I think, the fact that we're here, gosh, how many years later? Is it 5 years now? Since 2017? 18, 20, 21, 22, 23,
7
24.
years later.
I mean, we didn't start doing these dossier conversations 7 years ago, but yeah, we're here 7 years later, continuing to stand in this way, and I don't think it's robotic. So, so I'm grateful. Thank you all, because I don't know that I would have had the character to do it by myself, but it's definitely something that I think is one of the most rewarding experiences that I've had, and have had the opportunity to get to know myself through. So if you guys have any comments, if you guys have experiences of your own that helped you experience character in yourself, or you're trying to explore it more deeply and make different distinctions, please do, share in the comments. We'd love to hear your experiences. And If there's any other questions or things like that that you guys want to hear about, please let us know. So go ahead and share, like, subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next video.